Hello. It is Dr. Nicole Peak. I'm a licensed psychologist based out of Colorado. How are we all doing today? Let's see. I want to jump on here today and talk about something that I commonly will talk about in session with folks. One of the most common things that I get, I don't want to say ask, but we talk about in therapy. When I ask people what are some of their goals and for treatment, what do they want to get out of the therapy? People often will say, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy, Dr. Peak. And browse through Insta, look at commercials, look online, look on TV, and what do we find? We find products and programs often geared at increasing happiness. And did you know that on the New York Times bestsellers, some of the longest standing books on the New York Times bestseller are actually self-help books? So it makes sense, right? I mean, isn't that part of pursuing, part of the American dream is pursuing happiness, right? But I'm on here today to talk about, what if that's part of the problem? What if that's what keeps us in a rut?
Oh!
Let's think about it. So let's talk about this today. Come on into session with me, and let's give it a chat. So one of the things, let's go to the research, right? What does statistics and research show us about emotions and, just in the world at large? And what we find, obviously not surprising to you, is that there is a lot of suffering and pain in the world, right? In fact, we know that about 50% of people will experience some kind of psychiatric disorder of some type in their lifetime. And we know that there's constant initiatives, right, of reducing suicide and homicide rates, and increasing numbers of anxiety and depression and substance use and drug use. So there is pain and suffering in the world. And what if that, in fact, is not the outlier and is more the norm? But Dr. Peak, that's kind of depressing, right? But one of the problems we find in pursuing happiness is that when we're constantly chasing after this, we become more and more aware of how unhappy we are because we have this constant comparison, this constant black or white kind of thinking, right? If I'm always chasing after this good happiness, then life must be bad. Life must suck, right? But Dr. Peak, I feel so uncomfortable. I want this out of my life. I don't want to be anxious anymore. I don't want to be depressed anymore. I just want to get rid of it. I just want to make it stop. So let's talk a little bit about discomfort and pain, right? There's what's known as clean discomfort. So clean discomfort is clean pain is when we experience something painful in life, right? The loss of a loved one, being diagnosed with some kind of physical illness or ailment, being in a car accident, for example. And those we know are parts of life, right? And when we experience painful emotions in response to that, that's what's expected and normal. We also have what's more known as dirty discomfort or dirty pain. And that is when we start to experience, in essence, negative emotion of our negative emotion. So sadness over sadness, or being anxious at the fact that you're anxious. And then the problem in that is that people then start developing all kinds of things to avoid negative emotion, right? And that's where, people will engage in eating disorders, substance, alcohol use, OCD type behaviors in a grand effort to avoid pain, right? And that, in fact, becomes the problem, right? So is there something to be said in allowing that discomfort to be there, right? And is it possible, I guess, in essence, to experience pain, yet also be able to feel fulfillment and pleasurable experience or emotion in my life? The answer is yes. Those things can coexist, right? Those things can coexist. Emotions are a normal part, the good and the bad, right? And here at Peak Psychological Services, or I myself, talk a lot about the idea of not just feeling better, but getting better. And sometimes to get better is not always to feel better, right? Because sometimes allowing myself to experience and feel the not so good is actually what helps me be able to move on and to actually get better. Okay? So think about it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.